Protests, assaults, terror attacks. There seems to be a whole lot of hate in the United States nowadays. But what exactly is hate? Most of our feelings come in four basic flavors: happy, sad, angry, and afraid. But hate, it turns out, is a different emotion entirely, even from a biological perspective. It was about a decade ago, researchers pinpointed what has come to be known as the brain's hate circuit. They put study participants into an MRI and showed them pictures of people that they had neutral feelings about. Then they also showed them pictures of people that they hated. In this case, perhaps an ex-lover or a competitor at work. And they found certain parts of their brains lit up. And these parts of the brain play a big role in generating aggressive behavior and then translating that behavior into action. All in all, a bad combination, fueled by competitiveness or sense of loss. And you know that saying, there's a thin line between love and hate? Well, turns out that's rooted in science as well. Much of the brain's hate circuit also fires up when you feel romantic love. And like love, there is evidence of hatred dating back to our oldest ancestors. For instance, it was likely the emotion of hate that made early hunter-gatherers feel okay about taking food away from their rivals in order to survive. In today's world, when people become frustrated, insecure, or afraid of losing something like their job, neighborhood, or their power, they can become filled with hate. And again, they can act out to save what they think they're losing.
How you doing, guys? When I was a kid, I used to go to a private school. It was a Catholic school. Now, anybody who knows anything about Catholic schools, they're pretty much privately funded. So they run everything on a shoestring budget. So they have to hire their own buses. This is after they drop everybody off at the public schools and they come and get the private schools. There was another Catholic school not too far from ours. So we all were on the same buses. So here we were, one side of the bus, our school. On the other side was the other Catholic school, who were our sworn enemies. And what was their crime? They went to this other Catholic school. So we had developed this competitive spirit against them, and we butted heads. There were more fights on that school bus. Why? Because they went to that other school. They were enemies. Funny, as years went by and you get to know these people, they were no different than us. I think I was in 5th or 6th grade. I can't remember which. My family had pulled me out of the private school because there was just too much bullshit there. And they moved me to this public school. Down the road, not 2 miles, was another elementary school. Same scenario. They were our sworn enemies. And why? Because they went to that other school. Anytime there was any kind of event where we were in the same location, again, there were fights break out. We hated them because they went to the west. A year or so later, we're all under one banner in the local junior high school. Well, at first, we stayed with the people we knew, and they stayed with the people they knew. As time went on, we were kind of incorporated into one school. They were no longer our enemies because we were in the same school. Now, on the other side of the city was another junior high school who now became our sworn enemies. And any type of rallies, any type of football games, we butted heads. Fights would break out. And, well, by the time we got to high school, and again, same scenario, we're all under one banner. That seemed kind of childish. So the competitive spirit now went from city to city to city. It's amazing how people hold on to this competition throughout their lives. The older I get, the less competitive I get. I used to be very competitive, very confrontational, very vindictive. But as I got older, I found it was a waste of energy. It was about 8 years ago. I was having coffee at this one place, and it's a place I've been going to for many years, and their night cook walked out, and the owner didn't know what to do, so I says, okay, I'll help you out. I'll jump in and finish out the shift for you. They asked me to come back the next night and the next night and the next night. And I says, listen, I can only do this for a few weeks because a job is opening up and I'm going to be taking it. As it was, I opted to stay there. Now, they had a problem holding on to night people there because of the woman they had during the day, who was the most vindictive, bitter person I think I've ever met. I've known this woman for about 10 years now, and I've never known her to say anything good about anyone. Now, she and I never had a problem until I started working there. All of a sudden, this woman was hell-bent on getting me fired. She had nothing good to say about me at all to anyone. Now, the previous owners, they realized this, so it went in one ear and out the other. Like I said, she was hell-bent on it. In all the years I've known her, she and I have never had words. We've never had an argument. Actually, when we were working together, we got along very well. This all happened while I was no longer there. About 2 years ago, my employers had lost their lease, and there was a corporate takeover. That changed the animal completely. It went from being a very relaxed work atmosphere to now a corporate atmosphere, it sucked. Basically, it sucked. This woman was now on a mission to ruin me entirely. She now had a new set of management to chew on and trash talk me to them. For the most part, it went in one ear and out the other. And for the most part, my coworkers are now new people. Everybody was gone. She and I were the only two that stayed on the job. I got along very well with most of my coworkers, so they didn't see the problem, but I was hearing constantly where she was constantly trash talking me. And as time went on, the things she was saying were getting worse and worse and more destructive. Didn't really start taking its toll. And I've noticed as I've gotten older, I'm getting more and more susceptible to negative energy around me. When I was younger, I didn't notice it so much because I would pretty much combat it and repel it. But as I got older, I started realizing that the place was getting very hostile. I got to the point where if I went somewhere and sensed that it was negative energy in there, couldn't explain why, I just got the hell out of there and went somewhere else. But the work environment had gotten so hostile just because of this one person that it was starting to take its toll pretty much over the last 6 months. This summer, I started noticing it. A lot of people around me started noticing I wasn't smiling anymore. I really wasn't talking much anymore. My coworkers were like, what's the problem? I started noticing it in my videos over the last 6 months that I was coming across very different than I used to. So pretty much this summer, I opted to stay off camera. I was uploading videos, but if anybody had followed my videos pretty much over the summer, I was not in them. And that was basically the reason why it was really starting to take its toll. About a month ago, we heard that somebody was buying the place out. But at this point in time, the damage had been done. It was too late. This woman started telling my coworkers that I was being fired. That was it. They were done with me. They were letting me go. She started telling customers the same thing. And what she didn't realize, I've been in this town for 30 years, and every person she told would repeat it to me. Whether it was true or not, I'll really never know, but I had just had it. And I says, no matter what the reason is, I was starting to get sick. Just the thought of going into work, and I had never been like that before, so it was like, it's time to go on somewhere else. So one day I went out and I got another job, and I says, okay, I'm going to go in and put my notice in, just tell them I'm finishing off the week and I'm going somewhere else. I got a phone call that day not to come into work, that the new owners were transferring ownership, so I wouldn't be needed. They were closing down for the day. Found out the next day that was not the reason they asked me to stay home. I got a phone call from the new owner, and I figured, okay, he's probably letting me go, which is fine. I got another job anyways. And I was talking to him, and he said, I came in the place last month, and the place had such a negative vibe, and it came down to one person. Well, as the conversation went on, he told me he had let this woman go. Now, this woman had been there for 10 years, but he opted not to keep her on because he admitted to me that she was trash talking me. Vinny this, Vinny that, Vinny this, and even management was jumping on board. Vinny, 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 in an effort to get me out of there. He told me that they kept trash talking you but could not make a valid point. See, that was the thing over this last 2 years. They kept trying to fire me but could not come up with a valid reason to do so. And he finally let this woman go. And it was amazing the next few days how different the atmosphere was. But now here I was stuck with 2 jobs, and I'm like, wow, that changed the ball game completely. But this woman was so hell-bent and vindictive. She was fueled by so much hatred for me that eventually sank her. Now, what was her issue? None of us really never knew. She never had an issue with me till I started working there. The only thing we could ever figure out, she saw me as competition. Which really, at this stage of my life, I'm not very competitive. I'm approaching retirement, and I'm not after anybody's job. Just let me do mine. But as time went on, she was getting so hell-bent, and the things this woman was saying about me and feeding to other people was downright destructive. She couldn't get me fired. She couldn't turn my coworkers against me. So what she tried to do was change their perception of me. Most of them took it as a BS and didn't believe a word she was saying. But I was thinking, after hearing some of the things she was saying, was downright destructive and could have had long-term damage. And this was the main reason I figured, I got to get out of there. The place is just too hostile, and it was starting to take its toll. I mean, it was pretty bad. I'd be sitting there hours before work getting sick to my stomach with the thought of going in. I didn't feel this way too often. The last time I felt this way was my last few years as one of Jehovah's Witnesses. It had become very hostile. Now I had been mocked, so I had finger pointing on me all the time, and it got to the point where I just did not want to be there. I realized that Jehovah's Witnesses were not a loving organization, but were fueled by hatred. I used to hear, we hate what Jehovah hates, all the time. No, you hate what your governing body tells you to hate. For the most part, anybody not in your organization or anybody who's left your organization. Over the last couple of weeks, we've heard about watchtowers talking about hate speech from a lot of the ex-JW activists. This is coming from Watchtower. Now, hate speech was never a word up until the last few years. I mean, that was never, I don't even know if it was ever really in the dictionary. Now they're accusing other people of hate speech. And why? Because the things that are being exposed about them are starting to hurt them. It's hurting their bottom line, the dollar. So what do they use? Their only weapon they have are the Jehovah's Witnesses and their buddies at the United Nations. So what they're trying to do now is change the perception of the people that have left the organization from people on the outside, the United Nations, which they've already been doing with Jehovah's Witnesses on the inside. See, when you've left, we all know how they're viewed, apostates. But who started the hate speech? Who started the name calling? Does anybody remember mentally diseased apostates? So now Watchtower are not only uninspired ministers, uninspired shepherds, but now they consider themselves uninspired psychologists. So they can deem anybody a mentally diseased person simply because they left the organization. Of course, this doesn't qualify with pedophiles and predators within the organization. They have to be forgiven. But if you leave, you are now mentally diseased. So the hate speech has come from them for some time. And it's only been in the last few years that the ex-JW community has started to pick up momentum. Unfortunately, this black and white hate and love thinking sticks with a lot of ex-Jehovah's Witnesses too. Not too many, but some of them. There was a ex-JW who joined the community, or tried to join the community a couple of years ago, and he still had that black and white mindset. Now, because of his own indiscretions, the community opted to get some distance. It's an individual thing. If somebody chooses not to associate with somebody, that simply they don't want to associate with them. With some of his antics, many in this community opted to stay away from him. He made a comment in a video towards me last year that, well, you don't want to be my friend. I'm assuming you want to be my enemy. No, I simply don't want to be your friend. You're not really worth having for an enemy. You're no threat to me. But this was that black and white thinking. If you weren't with him, you were against him. And how many Jehovah's Witnesses still think that way? If you're not with us, you're against us. And this is Watchtower fueling this type of feeling. Jehovah's Witnesses really think they're a loving organization, but they don't realize that their love is fueled by hate. And why? It keeps everybody away from them. The one threat ex-JWs have to current Jehovah's Witnesses is not that they're going to pervert their mind, it's that they're going to tell them what's really going on in the organization. And this is why Watchtower has to fuel this hatred, to keep the information away. Well, guess what? It's not working so well. So now Watchtower has to go to the worldly organizations, those organizations they shouldn't have anything to do with, and come up with this hate speech. Anybody who's doing videos or any type of activism is now being accused of hate speech. And to be honest with you, who is spewing most hate? Now, if somebody asks me if I actually hate anybody, looking back, there's a lot of people in my life I don't like at all. There's some people that really turn my stomach, but in all honesty, thinking about it, no, I don't think I could actually hate anybody. That's a very strong emotion. And to hold on that kind of emotion for that long, it's eventually going to take you down like it did this woman. As a matter of fact, the woman I worked with, none of us could figure out how somebody could hold on to that much hate perpetually 24/7 and not keel over. And the sorry thing is, it caught up to her. And Watchtower, if you think about it, you're throwing so much hate at your people and eventually, and now it's caught up with you. And this is why Jehovah's Witnesses don't fare too well in the health department, because they're fueled by so much hate. Anyways, guys, I'd love to hear your thoughts, and I will talk to you soon. You have a good day.